The nature of individuals depends on the material conditions determining their production, Karl Marx wrote in 1845. This idea is the basis of the philosophical view called materialism. Hello, my name is Levi CHECKETTS. I am an assistant professor of religion and philosophy at Hong Kong Baptist University. Today, I'm going to tell you about philosophy in the 2019 Oscar-winning film, Parasite. Marx believed that there was no universal rationality, but rather that what is rational changes from one era to another, which he attributed primarily to economic factors. In other words, the way people think, what they value, and how they live are not independent or autonomous events. They are results of the particular socioeconomic conditions in which a person lives. Put another way, if you're born and raised in poverty, your entire experience of the world will be different from a person born and raised in wealth. Bong Joon-ho's 2019 film Parasite, or Gisaengchung in Korean, centers on two families, the criminally clever, poor Kims, and the innocently naive, rich Parks. And while crafty poor criminal and innocent trusting rich is a long-standing motif and narrative, Bong subverts this through a Marxian focus on the plight of the Kims rather than the Parks. The audience watches the struggle of the Kims, who have to be clever as foxes in order to survive in Hell Joseon, the modern dog-eat-dog, highly capitalistic Korean society. On the other hand, the gullible Parks are taken advantage of over and over, and yet remain wealthy because social conditions are to their advantage. The first act of the film shows us the tenacity of the poor Kims, who are immensely talented, but unable to secure jobs until the son Kyu's friend Min drops a scholar's rock and a job opportunity in his lap. When Kyu goes to tutor the innocent Dahae, he realizes the simplicity of the Park family is ripe for exploitation for his family. Through fraud, duplicity, sabotage, and even violent assault, each of the four Kims successfully attach themselves to the Park household. The audience gets a first sense of the titular parasite, with the four Kims seemingly bleeding the Parks. But 19th century social reformers used the parasite imagery in a different way, one which the movie also alludes to. Except for the patriarch, whose work we don't really clearly see, none of the Parks have any productive skills, while the Kims labor to provide the Parks with education, therapy, carriage, cooking, and cleaning. Marx's longtime collaborator, Friedrich Engels, wrote, "Want leaves the working man the choice between starving slowly, killing himself speedily, or taking what he needs where he finds it. In plain English, stealing. And there is no cause for surprise that most of them prefer stealing to starvation and suicide." In other words, the criminal activities the Kims engage in to secure their jobs are their only way for them up. Each of them is able to do the job that they are hired for, however. They demonstrate productive labor, providing the Parks with unearned benefits in home maintenance, transportation, education, and culture that allow the Parks to remain in the upper echelons of society, gaining what Pierre Bourdieu refers to as social and cultural capital. Even though the Kims don't seem to have any hesitation to break the law, we do discover that they have values. We hear them reflect that Mr. Park is such an honest man, that Mrs. Park is so nice, that Dahae would make such a good wife for Kyu. But even after they show such respect for the Park family, they express disdain for those who are poor like them. After a brief moment of regret for the people whose livelihoods they trampled in order to get their own positions, Ki-jung shouts, "Not Driver Yoon, but me!" Her outburst, paralleled by the ensuing violent conflict between the Kims and the former housekeeper Moon Gwang, make it clear that they have no qualms about hurting others in order for them to keep their own jobs, trampling the parasitic bugs beneath them in a sense, but somehow they still hold on to some values. Here again, Marx is instructive. Quote, "The ideas of the ruling class are in every epoch the ruling ideas, i.e., the class which is the ruling material force of society is at the same time its ruling intellectual force." Unquote. In other words, the values of the ruling class in capitalistic societies, the upper socioeconomic class, shape the values of society. Mr. and Mrs. Park are good, while Driver Yoon and Moon Gwang are fellow parasites, even to the poor Kims. The promise of capitalism is that those who work hard will be rewarded. The Park's wealth, then, is seen as an indication of their hard work and their moral goodness, while the poverty of everyone else shows their lack of ambition. The perversity of this moral system is known to the audience, but becomes clear to Kim Ki-raek only as the movie moves into its final act. Bong's brilliant use of olfactory sense as a central motif demonstrates how the structures of class are unassailable, despite the fact that the Kims are able to gain respectable employment through their talent and hard work. Their smell, you sometimes smell it on the subway, serves as a stigma of their poverty. Nothing that the Kims do will make them respectable to the Parks because the Parks are shaped by the values of the upper classes, values which see the poor as parasites. The Kims have all internalized these values, of course, but they begin to realize there is no desert to either their poverty or to the Parks' wealth. This disjuncture of values comes to a head at the film's climax. Ki-raek is asked to abandon his dying daughter in order to save his boss's epileptic son after an attack at Dasong's birthday. In a brilliant twist, though, Bong allows Ki-raek a third choice opened by his employer's repugnance to the smell of the poor. Ki-raek kills Dong-ik instead. Marxists historically have differed in their views about the use of violence for achieving their goals. Marx himself believed that a violent revolution arising organically from the working class was necessary to achieve their liberation. Frantz Fanon, Michel Foucault, and Georg Lukács also believed that violence was necessary for liberation. But Christian Marxists, like Gustavo Gutierrez, Paulo Freire, and Jacques Ellul, believe more in social transformation rather than violent overturn. Ki-raek's murder of Dong-ik seems to test this hypothesis. Will this spontaneous act of what Lukács refers to as class consciousness liberate the poor family? The conclusion of Parasite is bleak. The Kims don't seem to have any way out of the struggle of poverty, and even the violence does not solve the problem for them. As Ki-raek trades going to prison for voluntarily imprisoning himself in the walls of the Park House, we see that even the autonomous choice was itself an illusion. Ki-raek remains trapped in the metaphorical iron cage of Max Weber.
So freezing, so cold, behold, frostbite, they feeling. I could tear you apart, or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need it.